Chiedo ai colleghi di sedersi, così iniziamo. Grazie. Un attimo, 2 minuti. Few minutes.
They needed a break because the other session was a bit longer.
Long. Ok, buona ripresa a tutti. Riprendiamo con la lex magistrale del professor Cefai. Io sono molto contenta di poter portare all'interno appunto della nostra sezione il professor Cefai, che è una collega col quale collaboro da anni, è una persona appunto che sui temi dell'educazione, sui temi dello sviluppo, sui temi appunto della scuola è molto impegnato, è professore presso il Dipartimento di Psicologia dell'Università di Malta e direttore del Centro Europeo per la Resilienza. In questi anni io ho avuto modo di collaborare con lui su progetti che hanno portato avanti un modello di intervento nei contesti scolastici sulla promozione della resilienza attraverso un curriculum verticale, lavorando sulle dimensioni soprattutto socio-emotive. È presidente onorario e fondatore dell'European Network for Social and Emotional Competence, l'ENSEC, e codirettore della rivista International Journal of Emotional Education. I suoi interessi di ricerca si focalizzano sulla resilienza nei contesti educativi, sulla salute mentale e la prevenzione delle difficoltà sociali ed emotive dei bambini e dei giovani. Coordina numerosi progetti di ricerca. In questo momento abbiamo chiuso il progetto Rescue e è stato appunto di nuovo finanziato la prosecuzione di questo progetto attraverso una promozione di un progetto che vedrà impegnati fino alla fine del 2018 6 università europee nell'ambito della promozione della resilienza attraverso la formazione degli insegnanti. Questo progetto verrà sperimentato nei singoli paesi che sono coinvolti e il prodotto del progetto europeo sarà l'istituzione di un master europeo che verrà coordinato dall'Università di Malta e portato avanti appunto dai paesi che sono in questo momento coinvolti. È autore di numerose pubblicazioni internazionali. Ultimamente è uscito il suo libro Mental Health Promotion in School, Cross Cultural Narrative and Perspective. Io sono molto onorata di averlo qua, oltre che collega e anche un amico. Lascio a lui adesso la parola per introdurci a questo tema. Il titolo a cui abbiamo dato è Social Emotional Education in Education for the 21 Century.
So, thank you, Professor Zanetti. Thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here for many reasons. First of all, it's very nice weather, but also I come from a country which is very, very close to here, Malta. So we consider Italy as the second home, Sicilia as even closer to us. So it's a pleasure to be like among colleagues. What we'll be doing today, the outline together, is socio-emotional education. First, why do we need it? Second, okay, let's say for argument's sake, it's good to do it in our schools. However, are we wasting our time and our students' time? So, does it work? Is there any evidence? Thirdly, from now this area have been working for 30 years. What have we learned in these 30 years from research? And finally, the way forward. Okay? If you like, I mean, I can speak a bit also of Italian, but I leave it up to you whether you want me to first speak in English and then maybe translate a bit in Italiano, it's up to you. C'è un bisogno di tradurre all'italiano o in inglese si basta? Okay. Maybe when I introduce a concept a bit technical, maybe I can try to. Okay, so let's start. First of all, a little bit about my background. So, as Professor Zanetti very well said, I am the director of a center we established 10 years ago to do research in this area. Center for Resilience and Socio-Emotional Health. It's another term for socio-emotional learning. And our focus is to create healthy spaces, spazi sani, which promote the resilience, health, and psychological well-being of children and young people. It's very much multidisciplinary, in line with the trend of this conference, the combination of education and psychology, but also health, sociology, and so on. We also work at European level. So as a center, we work very much at international level. We have various agreements with Italian universities, like University of Pavia. The last agreement was University of Palermo to exchange staff and do conjoint research. European level, we have a center we established 10 years ago. Those of you who are in this area might have heard of CASEL in the United States, Collaborazione per Socio-Emotional Learning. This is something equivalent for Europe. Okay? Those of you who are interested, there is the website. We also have a journal in this area. Okay, so the focus of my talk today is this motto captures very well the work we are doing as a center in research and training of staff, but also the focus of this talk. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And who believes more in this than psychologists? Questa udienza. Right, so come back to the first question. Why is it important that our educational system shifts its focus and focus a little bit more on psychology? That we bring more psychology, developmental psychology, health psychology, educational psychology, neuroscience in the classroom. First of all, many children today come to school with a heavy baggage. Now, this is a little bit of pun. So I'm here talking of the psychological bag they bring with them in their classroom. So reflect a little bit, maybe those of you, especially psychologists or teachers or researchers who work with schools. What sort of baggage, we call it, bagaglio, psicologico, do Italian children bring with them in their classroom, which needs to be addressed by teachers, educational psychologists, for many reasons. First, because it will interfere with the learning process. But secondly, because education is not just about academic achievement. Okay, so while you are reflecting on this baggage, I made some slides which maybe captures some of the reality here, but I'm sure I might have left some of the other realities you might have. For instance, we know that the mental health of children nowadays and their well-being is very much influenced by the social media. Instagram, for example, has been written in some newspapers, one of the most dangerous tools for young people, okay? So we are talking media overuse and exploitation. That sort of baggage comes also in the classroom. I'm sure you have heard, like for example, suicides among young people because of cyberbullying. Talking about bullying, okay, like physical bullying, we wrote a report recently for the EU. Bullying is a very, very real and present problem in European schools. Stress, I don't know whether Italian children experience stress, academic stress, stress coming from the family, loneliness, parental discord, so violence, fighting in family, and children caught in between, abuse, school dropout, absenteeismo, poverty. And we are talking nowadays about modern poverty as well. Okay? When we talk about poverty, we're also talking poverty in our own cities, especially as a result of the recession which hit Europe recently. Mental health problems. For example, try to now contextualize this a little bit now to the topic of today. If we talk about mental health problems and socio-emotional learning, socio-emotional education, the topic of today, is very much related to mental health. Okay? Not exactly to mental illness. So it's very important later on we make this distinction. For instance, but let's talk first of all about mental illness. We know that 20% of school children from 6 to 17 years face mental health difficulties during the course of any given year. And most of these are related to what we call externalized and internalized difficulties. Okay, conduct, so behavior problems, anxiety and depression. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among those aged 10 to 14. 10% of that 20% exhibit clinical symptoms of mental health difficulties which require intervention. Longitudinal research shows that mental health difficulties have been increasing in the last quarter of a century, where we have data. Okay, this is more international level. Especially more recently, difficulties appear to be increasing among female adolescents. There the evidence is even more conclusive. And the last sentence here, I think is very, very pertinent for us today. As psychologists and educationalists, half of mental health difficulties in adulthood begin before 14 years. So school has a very, very important role in prevention. So the argument, therefore, in view of this changing reality, technological reality, economic, social, and psychological stresses children are facing today, the argument I'm making, and we have been making over these past years, that education needs to change. Schools are not only about academic performance, but they are one of the primary developmental systems in children's lives, and they need to support the holistic development of children. And schools are very well placed to do this. Not only because they are a primary developmental context after the family, but because of their broad reach. Schools are one of the very few public institutions which captures all children. Well, most of them. Okay? Because school is compulsory, so schools are one of the few places to have access to all children. Centrally, in many instances, schools operate as central hubs in the community. So there is a hive of activity going on there. So very ideally situated to work with children, communities, families. And finally, because of the prolonged exposure, not only in terms of time, children may be, I don't know the school day in Italy, in Malta it's about 6 hours a day. Okay? But also they spend about 15 years of their lives in schools. So we can see what potential there is in schools. Therefore, the argument is, in view of this changing reality, we have to make education more relevant and meaningful for children and young people for today's society. And we both, so education needs to reflect these current challenges. And if we are going to have quality education, we have to combine, I'm sure you've had this argument before, the head and the heart. Okay? When we talk about the head, we are talking about the cognitive development. The heart, we are talking about the socio-emotional development. Both head and heart are important for children's development. In a minute, we will see why it is important for the head that we include the heart. The head needs the heart, although we might think that the heart interferes with the head. Okay, I like this quotation by one of my colleagues in the States, which we work with, Maurice Elias. Those of you who are in this area, you might have heard about him. And especially in educational system, we're being put under pressure by PISA. Have you heard about PISA standards? Okay, I will refer to it later on, where there is pressure on schools to improve their achievement and ranking, where we are ranking one school with another on cognitive tasks, and one country with another. I don't know where you are on this list of ranks. Malta is in the last quarter of the countries, and that puts tremendous pressure on our educational system. So he said, what we need to do in preparing our children is we need to prepare our children for the tests of life, rather than burdening them with a life of tests. And what are the tests of life? As we shall see, many of these tests, working with others, healthy relationships, making decisions, ethical behavior, going to work on time, resolving conflict, solving problems, many of these tasks are socio-emotional. In fact, I had a slide somewhere which should... Anyway, for example, if we look at this slide, this is from the last report by the World Economic Forum, Future of Jobs report, last year. Emotional intelligence, now this is another term which we use. Sometimes we use socio-emotional learning in the States. We use socio-emotional education because we think that's broader. It's not only about learning, it's about teaching. Sometimes it's called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence was the original term used by Daniel Goleman, as you might know. So this World Economic Forum, which was identifying the top 10 21st century skills for the fourth industrial revolution. It lists emotional intelligence as one of the top 10 skills expected from employers in 2020. And another 5 skills of those 10 are also very much related to socio-emotional education. Complex problem solving, people management, coordinating, collaboration with others, judgment and decision making, negotiation and conflict resolution. Okay, so before we go on and now look at whether this is a relevant construct, whether it makes sense when put into practice, let's maybe define very briefly what we mean by socio-emotional education. So we are talking here about, this is a definition which we are from a text a report we are writing for the European Union on this topic. I will mention it to you later on because it will be published in November of this year. So it should be a very useful document because it's an analysis of the present data and recommendations for the European Union on this area. So it's a process by which we develop, so learn and apply here, social and emotional competence for personal growth, for social growth, and also for academic growth and development through curricular, relational, and contextual approaches. Later on, I will define this definition. Will become a bit more concrete later on when we see what we mean, what we have learned in this area. There are two main focuses in socio-emotional learning. First, there is a focus on the self on one side, and the focus on the others on the other. Okay? Secondly, the other dimension is there is a focus on awareness, and then and then a focus on management. If we put these two together, that will bring four. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management. That's the two major dimensions when we talk about socio-emotional learning. It is also a science, socio-emotional learning, okay? It's very much evidence-based, as we shall see in a minute, and it's very much interdisciplinary. It's not only the province of psychology, but, of course, it originated a lot, especially in the States, from psychology, from various fields of psychology: developmental psychology, educational psychology, clinical psychology, health psychology, nowadays positive psychology from Martin Seligman, but also from other areas: education, health promotion, epidemiology. Okay, so this is one of the most common models. We have developed our own model, which we'll be presenting later on, but this is up to date. The most known model is international in socio-emotional education by Cassell, okay, and it's more or less, there are these four areas I told you about. If we start from the blue box, we are talking about self-awareness. What are we talking about here? Recognizing one's emotions and values, as well as one's strengths and challenges. So knowing myself from a very young age, and being taught directly and explicitly to reach these objectives. This is what socio-emotional is about. Then self-management, the yellow box. Now that I know more myself, what I can do to manage more myself to improve myself. So I'm talking here, for example, impulse control, management of emotions and behaviors to achieve one's goals. For example, if I want better relationships, okay, I have to learn to control my anger, for instance, my emotions. I have to improve my academic performance. I have to be more self-disciplined. Then we go downwards to the social, the others' perspectives. So the orange or brown, orange probably is that. Orange. Okay, social awareness. So here we are showing understanding of others and also empathy. Okay? Being in the shoes of other people, seeing the world from the viewpoint of the other person, and giving feedback about that to the other person and how the other person is feeling. The social management, because maybe social management doesn't sound so well, usually we say relationship skills. It's building and maintaining relationships, forming positive relationships, working as part of a team, and dealing effectively with conflict. The last dark blue box, in our model we have done away, we have removed that box and included it with the social and self. It's about responsible decision making. Okay? Making ethical, constructive choices about personal and social behavior, because it has both components. It has to do with the self and with the others. That's more or less what we are talking about, socio-emotional education. Right, and this field has brought about a paradigm shift. I don't know how in Italy, okay, a change in the way we think about something. You know, paradigm, okay, so a transformation about how we see the world in this perspective. And the paradigm shift is that socio-emotional education is not about mental illness. It's not just about prevention from becoming ill. It's about promoting. And this paradigm shift is very much reflected in psychology nowadays. The shift from the traditional clinical psychology towards the positive psychology and health psychology. The focus is about happy, healthy, achieving children. This is what socio-emotional is about. Happy, healthy, and achieving, productive. So they go together. To conclude this part, in fact, socio-emotional education is for happier, healthier, and more productive world. It leads to happier, healthier, and productive citizens. It promotes mental health and reduces mental illness. For example, if we talk about adults, depression, okay, is the main issue of the day. 300 million people now living with depression. Increase of 18% in the last 10 years. Socio-emotional learning also promotes harmonious relationships and collaboration. And what we are seeing nowadays, what is taking place in our communities, with the refugee crisis, for example, the rise of the far right, this socio-emotional learning has become even more and more meaningful to create harmony and solidarity among communities. It maybe closer to us, reduces crime rates, violence, and antisocial behavior, improves the integration of migrant and minority communities, and alleviates social marginalization, helps towards equity and social justice. Who would argue against this vision of the world? Right. So this is very nice. In theory, it will be great if we have this word. Now, but does socio-emotional learning in actual fact bring this change? Or this is a romantic vision that some of us have to change the world? Okay, so this brings us to the second question. Let's see what research has found, okay? This is a relatively new area. Research has been going on in the last 20, 25, 30 years. It started mostly in the States, but now there is more and more research in Europe. And for example, Professor Fonsi was saying, I think one of her, hopes, I don't know how she put it, was that there will be more research in Italy carried out by Italian psychologists about your own realities here. This is one area, I think, where there is a gap which needs to be filled. I must say that I have colleagues in Italy, like Professor Zanetti. Also, I have colleagues from Milan and Perugia who are already doing some work on this, okay? But here there is an area which is waiting for more research. Okay, so scientific evidence, research reviews have documented that socio-emotional learning is in fact useful, meaningful, and relevant construct. More than 500 evaluations of various programs, many of them universal and school-based, have been carried out. during my talk, I will be talking mostly on universal programs. So we are talking here about programs, which, for example, the classroom teacher implements with all the children. Later on, we will see whether these are effective, though, for children who are at risk or already manifesting problems. Are these enough? We'll come to that in a minute, because that brings more and more the psychologist's role, working with individuals. Okay, so correlational and longitudinal research indicates that socio-emotional learning is positively related to adjustment outcomes, both cognitive and, of course, socio-emotional, and negatively related to a variety of problems. More specifically, those of you who are interested, okay, I can send more documents if you like, but these are, I'm sure you know, meta-analysis and review of studies, okay? These are at the top of the research profile, okay? The strongest. Here, when we have an analysis of the studies which carried out, okay? So this presentation is built on 4 of the major meta-analysis and reviews which have been carried out in the last 7 years or so. Those of you in the area would have surely heard about the first one, Durlach et al. Any book on C, Durlach, I think somebody has found how many times he has been cited in reference. Okay? He would have no problem to have become a professor, Durlach. Oh, this is one of the most cited meta-analysis of socio-emotional learning. And rightly so. Okay? Over 200 studies, it was the first, including about almost 300,000 kids from early years, kindergarten, up to high school. Then Sklad et al. And Weir and Nent, these are interesting. They came very close to Durlach, more or less at the same time, or very clear. But these are useful because these have, while Durlach was focused on mainly American studies, Sklad, who was from the Netherlands, and Weir from the UK, they also included European studies. So this is closer to home, to our reality. And then the final study, which has just been published, I think, 2 months ago, this summer, by Taylor et al. This is another big study, review of 82. It includes both United States and non-United States students, with over 100,000 students, and Taylor et al. Looked at follow-up, which is an interesting variable which Durlach et al. Did not do. So not only does it work, but does the effect continues after 6 months, after 1 year? Okay? Let's have a look what they found. How are we in terms of time? Okay, this one is one of the most cited pictures of Durlach's study. They have found, so what they did, they compared students who had socio-emotional learning education as part of their curriculum and students who did not. And what difference did they found? They have found a difference of 22% between the experimental and the control groups. 22% advantage is in socio and emotional skills for children who had socio-emotional education. They found a 9% increase in positive difference attitude. In what way? Positive attitude towards the self, more positive self-concept, towards others, but also towards school, towards education. In terms of behavior, they found a similar percentage of pro-social behavior. Okay? 9%. And this is very interesting, the academic achievement. They found 11, this is one of the most cited finding, because, as I said, you might have heard there was a movement against socio-emotional education. They called it the rise of therapeutic education. They were saying, look, our schools are not mental health clinics. We shouldn't be teaching socio-emotional learning in schools. We should be focused on academic achievement. This is what schools are about. And one of their arguments was also that it is taking time. If the teachers spend time teaching kids on socio-emotional learning, that time is taken away from academic learning. Now, the evidence shows it's the opposite. Students who had socio-emotional learning in their curriculum had 11% points more in academic achievement, this is standardized grades, academic grades, exams, than students who did not have socio-emotional education. So I think it couldn't be more clear than that. Then the decrease, they found a 9% decrease when you compare the two groups, control and experimental. In conduct problems, so conduct we are delinquency, substance use sometimes, although they didn't look at substance use as such, okay, antisocial behavior, absenteeism from schools, and also a decrease of 10 points in emotional distress, anxiety, depression. Okay, so this is, so I think we have to go very fast. So the evidence base, increase in positive attitudes, behavior, and academic learning, decrease in negative behaviors. The effect sizes were not perfect, okay, not very large, but they were modest. So they made a difference in the lives of children and young people, okay, and very comparable to other interventions, which sought to bring about a change. They found that the effective, it was socio-emotional learning, and here we are not talking about Durlach, we are also talking about meta-analysis, is effective regardless of the children's socio-economic background. So, in fact, this is one of the arguments for universal socio-emotional learning for the whole classroom. So it was effective for children coming from both urban and rural areas, from high socioeconomic status and low socioeconomic status, children from poor communities, and also from different regions. Therefore, in a way, socio-emotional learning operates as a resilience mechanism. Okay? It provides protective factors for children who are at risk. Okay, and let's look at only at Taylor's, because Taylor looked at the follow-ups, improvement over time. Okay, while Durlach more or less stopped at 6 months. So Taylor found that academic achievement, there was an improvement between the termination of the intervention up to 195 weeks. So we're talking about 3 years almost, right? 13% improvement index. Okay? So the effect of the intervention, socio-emotional learning, continued at least 3%, 13%. And we shall see later on in terms of adults. Socio-emotional skills, so how good the children are in solving problems, building relationships, controlling their anger, they found a 9% improvement since the beginning of the follow-up over about 1 year in this case. Prosocial behavior, they found 5% improvement over about 2 years. Positive attitudes, again, 5% improvement, 90 weeks. Conduct problems, they found a decrease, an improvement, in this case decrease, right, of 14% over 88 weeks, so we're talking about 1.5 years. While substance use, they found a decrease, improvement, decrease of 16% over about 2 years. Okay, so the third part. So the evidence shows unequivocally it works. Okay? Not perfect, we still have to improve the tools. But what have we learned now when we look at the studies in detail, not just at the outcomes, at the processes now? What helps to bring about this change? So basically, there are about 7 or 8 lessons, but I will go very briefly because I'm aware of time now. So there have been research, also longer longitudinal research, which looked at what happened in early years, like kindergarten, you call them here, kindergarten, and whether children who were in their early years had socio-emotional learning interventions when they were 4, 5, 6, and they looked at them again when they were adults, okay, like young adults 30 and over. They found, this is the study by Jones published 2 years ago, that those earlier kids, those adults, who when they were kids had socio-emotional learning, they were leading a more happier and more productive life. They were more successful at work, they had better mental health, and they had better relationships in their lives. That's the first lesson. So it's not just about schools, okay? It's about here, we're talking about human development. Secondly, okay, this is nice, but is socio-emotional learning something which can be taught, or is this part of one's personality? How malleable is the term we use usually? Okay, it is. How much we can shape children's development to teach them these skills. Research shows it can be taught and learned because we have evidence for that. For example, the process from Durlach is quite clear. What happened was, if you look at the blue boxes, this is the process of the learning process. First, there are 2 binary, okay? It's a dual approach. First, you have specific instruction in socio-emotional learning, where students are taught specifically, as part of the curriculum, how to use these and apply these skills. Secondly, the context, the learning environment, the classroom climate, whole school climate, that also promotes, through teachers' behaviors, the school's ethos, culture, that also promotes a climate which contributes, because children can see adults behave in this way, they are encouraged to be pro-social, for example, to solve their own problems. So these 2 together, the environment and specific teaching, this leads to a change, improvement of 22% in socio-emotional skills and 9% in positive attitudes. Now, that change, the brown here, middle, in socio-emotional skills and in attitudes led to a change in actual behavior. First, there was an increase, the last column, increase in pro-social behavior as a result, and in academic achievement, and a decrease in emotional problems and conduct problems. Do you understand that process? Okay, so teaching and climate together, they lead to a change and improvement in socio-emotional skills and positive attitudes. Together, these leads to positive academic and social behavior and decrease in emotional and conduct problems. Okay, another lesson learned. I will go, how much time we have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. It looks that we are wired, programmed, even from nature itself, to learn in tribes. And that's how we started, isn't it? And why, one of the theories, why we developed from earlier primates to modern day primates. Okay? And that relationships are crucial for learning. I'm sure you know this. Okay, you are from developmental and health and educational psychologist. So John Bowlby is one of the persons we studied when we were students. He said the propensity to make strong emotional bonds to particular individuals is a basic component of human nature. It's not only about babies here, okay, but we are talking about part of human development in general. Here we can see very much that this baby is learning very, very well, and the mother as well, through an emotional, socio-emotional medium, rather than necessarily a cognitive one. Daniel Goleman, if you are in this area, you might have heard the book Emotional Intelligence. Okay, this sparked off all this interest in the lay people, not in academia. Those of you who are interested in this area and haven't read, and you would like a general popular introduction, strongly recommend Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence. We have moved a lot since then, but this is a very good introduction. So he said, he was talking about resilience. Resilience, we are talking about socio-emotional development, growth, I think as very much Professor Fonsi mentioned, in the face of adversity and risk. Okay, he says the literature on resilience shows that those who have grown up in the worst circumstances shows that what made the difference in their lives as adults was not the terrible circumstances of their chaotic home, but the fact that one caring adult got involved in their lives and helped them out. Most times, that person is a teacher. Okay? That's John Bowlby. So, the social context of learning, we know that we are also from neuroscience, that we are the best climate, psychological, biological climate to learn is when we feel safe, secure, and valued. Very much socio-emotional mechanisms. Positive relationships trigger our brain chemistry to allow it to become more plastic, flexible, and then we learn more easily. On the other hand, traumatic experiences negatively alter the brain and shut down learning, maybe to give the energy to that person to survive. Okay, so as psychologists and as teachers, we need to provide more opportunities for tribal learning. Tribal learning is learning. We are also tribes nowadays. Okay, we call it different names, communities, okay, such as cooperative group work, mentoring, play, storytelling, connectedness. Right. Another lesson, so I'm going to maybe remove some of the lessons because we have no time, but this is an important lesson if we want to convince a school to go for socio-emotional learning, and they are concerned about the PISA standards. This is a very important way to convince them. Socio-emotional education serves as a meta-ability for academic learning. It serves as a medium through which children can learn. Okay, why? Because children feel safe, more connected to the learning experiences, they build strong work habits, they have better relationships with the teachers, and these factors help academic learning. Okay, the best way, we have already talked about this, that which is the best way to promote socio-emotional learning? Is to teach it to the children directly, taught, or to create climates where they observe, reinforce, apply. Some would argue, like, we cannot teach socio-emotional learning. It's not a skill. Research shows socio-emotional learning should be part of the curriculum. The best approach from those meta-analyses shows that it was most effective when it was taught and caught climate. Okay? So, the most successful way is that it will become structured, integrated in the curriculum. Programs which are short, experts come in, do a short program, and move out. Most of the time, the follow-up there doesn't leave much change. To bring about change, it must become embedded in the classroom climate. It becomes also infused in the other subjects of the curriculum. It should become also the talk of children when they are trying to solve problems, collaborate with each other. I think we can. Research now is showing that implementation, if we have an excellent program, if it's not well implemented, most of the time it will not work. This is now recent research coming out in the last 5-10 years. Okay? And the importance of adequate planning, coordination, monitoring, and evaluation. The importance of evidence base. Okay? If the school is thinking of a particular program, I would strongly recommend, look at the literature. Does it work? Okay. At the same time, however, we know that if we bring a program which has been, like, for example, POTS, which have been, or Incredible Years, or Second Step, which have been very successful in this stage, we cannot make the assumption that because it worked there, it is going to work here in Messina, or in Italy, or in Sicily. That's a mistake now we have learned very well. So while on one, we have to find a balance between implementation and adaptation, between preserving l'integrità of the program, not to make too many changes, either the program doesn't exist anymore as it was planned. At the same time, it is culturally sensitive and responsive to your own realities. So the trick here is, it's not to make any changes to the program, it's not to do it right, exactly, but to do it well. That the changes are made because we need this program to reflect our realities, not because we don't have time and we have overloaded curriculum, so we cut half of the sessions. Okay, so this is what I said. Okay, we say, in English we have this proverb, what is good for the goose, orca, is good for the gander, the male goose. So here it is, what is good for the female orca, is good for the male orca. This is not always so. What may be good for America may not be good for Italy. What may be good for Sicily may not be good for Lombardia, for example. Okay. Last lesson learned, and then we move to conclude. Okay, so I think I already have referred to universal programs, which is the best way to help children who are also in difficulties. The research shows the best way is to take a dual approach. First, universal program for the whole classroom, which targets also, keeps in mind also, the kids who have difficulties. So there are particular activities within that program which targets children in difficulty. Then there could be additional intervention, what we call targeted interventions in small groups, extra, for children who have problems. But this model is more effective than to do only small group intervention with a small number of children. So we strongly recommend, on the basis of the literature, that, and this is one program Professor Zanetti has mentioned, okay? This is what we call proportionate universalism. It's universal, it's for the whole classroom, but within it, we have specific activities targeting the needs, for example, of Roma children. Roma in terms of gypsies, okay? Or children with disability, or children coming from poor families, or children from migrant communities. However, that may not be enough if children have complex difficulties. So then this could be accompanied by small group or one-to-one interventions. This is the strongest approach. Universal plus additional targeted interventions. We don't have time to talk about the last lesson. Like other subjects, this needs also to be assessed because we need to, not however to rank one child to another, because this brings difficulties in this area, but maybe more to know whether children are learning. We have to have feedback, okay? So we propose especially what we call formative assessment. Assessment for learning. These are examples of surveys, for example, which are used to measure socio-emotional learning. To give you one example, in self-control, the teacher survey is The student said still when was supposed to, and he will tick that. The students will say, I can wait in line patiently. Okay, self-evaluation. These are social scenarios. So the kids are giving the situation. What would you do? For example, you are trying to watch a movie and your friend is being too loud. What will you do? Okay, social competence. More and more now, research is focusing on direct observation of skills because this is the most reliable, okay, objective method of measurement, where the teachers examine, or psychologists, okay, the student engaged in a socio-emotional tasks, observes, and then this is, for example, here, persistence. We examine, okay. Here, I said we have to be very careful about the PISA standards. This is the Tower of Pisa, but it has to do with PISA standards, okay? Not to fall in the trappings of academic assessment and start comparing children with another on socio-emotional skills. This is resilient, not resilient, okay? Healthy, non-healthy. That is, I think, quite dangerous, okay? Or comparing country with another. I think this capture, have you heard about the book Alice in Wonderland? Alice in Wonderland, it's a film with John, can't remember his name, very famous actor. Okay, there was the race called Caucasus race. And these, all sorts of animals, you can see these don't run. For example, the crab cannot be expected to run like the rat, okay? In the Caucasus race, you run at your own pace. Pace. Sorry, that's a mistake I did. Pace. Al tuo passo. And you will be guaranteed a prize. So everybody wins. There are no losers, as Alice says. The way forward, to conclude, we strongly recommend from research a whole school approach. We wrote a book, and a colleague from Pavia University at that time, socio-emotional education in primary school. And the whole school approach we have, first, we already mentioned, it's curricular and cross-curricular in the other subjects, explicit teaching. Then we organize the context, classroom, whole school, families, communities, which support and reinforce these skills. Parents have to be very, very much on board, important part, extremely important part of the program. Also, not only to support their kids, but to empower parents to provide for their own education. Because if parents' education and well-being improves, so will their children's. And last point, now we are moving more that way, the staff's, school staff's own socio-emotional learning. We cannot expect teachers to teach, model, and reinforce socio-emotional education and resilience if they themselves are not socially competent and if they are not healthy themselves, if they are struggling with their own issues. So, the schools nowadays are investing as much energy in children's well-being as well in staff's own well-being through adequate training, but also opportunities for staff to grow and take care of their own health. To conclude, therefore, those who are interested, this is a forthcoming EU report. We have been commissioned by the EU. It's exactly on this topic, integrating socio-emotional education in the school curriculum across the EU. Okay, it will be publicly available I think November. Thank you very much.
Ringrazio il professor Cefai perché penso ci abbia dato una ottima e ampia panoramica di come si possa e si debba lavorare in una prospettiva olistica, una prospettiva appunto che ha visto, partendo appunto dai due interventi che ci hanno preceduto prima, i fondamenti della psicologia, dello sviluppo e dell'educazione in Italia stanno andando in questa direzione, per cui io penso che anche un contributo come quello del professor Cefai, che ci ha dato sguardi molteplici ma sguardi concentrici sia diciamo, un buon augurio per poter lavorare ancora insieme. Io sono molto contenta di lavorare con lui e di portare avanti nel nostro contesto italiano una prospettiva di educazione, di sviluppo dell'apprendimento a partire dallo star bene dei ragazzi. Per cui il discorso del benessere, adesso ci sarà la tavola rotonda su benessere a scuola, penso che si possa veramente promuovere benessere promuovendo apprendimento, e questo un po' con le meta-analisi, con le evidence base che il professore ci ha presentato, penso che siano per tutti noi una buona carta che possiamo giocarci all'interno dei nostri contesti. Adesso non c'è più il professor Boscolo, però raccolgo anche a nome del CE la sua sollecitazione di rivolgersi a livello del ministeriale per far vedere come la nostra associazione possa davvero dare delle risposte, perché in questi anni sta già lavorando in questa direzione, promuovendo una scuola che metta al centro sicuramente la persona, ma che non abbia uno sguardo troppo focalizzato sull'alunno, ma uno sguardo sul contesto, e penso che questo sia un po' anche l'obiettivo che tutti noi siamo qua e vogliamo portare avanti. Grazie. Grazie. Thank you very much.